From Mamamia, welcome to The Spill, your daily pop culture fix. I'm Laura Brodnick.
And I'm Ksenia Lukic.
And coming up on the show today, we have a new casting announcement for The Devil Wears Prada that sent shockwaves through Australia, or at least through fans of a particular show. So we're going to get into that. And also, Gwyneth Paltrow has released a very, questionable, incredible ad, depending of which side of the fence you're on.
It is genius marketing from my point.
We're going to get into that. But first, a conversation from something that happened over the weekend that I feel like is tearing friend groups and group chats apart. And that is a poll that Triple J did over the weekend that was from their listeners. Everyone voted in the top 100 best Australian songs of all time. They did a huge countdown. I feel like a lot of people took time off work. People have held listening parties. Everyone on my social feeds was posting their reaction to each song as it came through. Really united the nation, I thought.
Or divided it depending on where you are, because there were definitely some notable people who were missing from the particular top 100 and some ones that we really did not expect to see in there. So, I'll give you the top 5 just in case you're not across it. So, Never Tear Us Apart, number 1, which I think is
okay with that.
I'm okay with that. The Nosebleed Section from Hilltop Hoods, number 2. 3, Untouched by the Veronicas. This is the one that seems to really be bothering people, which I have some thoughts about. Scar by Missy Higgins at number 4. And Don't Dream It's Over, Crowded House, which I think definitely deserves that top 5. So the Veronicas one seems to really be bothering people, but I feel like particularly in the last few years, it's become an even bigger hit than it was when it first came out. I don't know about you, but it always seems to be becoming like this, particularly on TikTok, almost like this unofficial anthem, and it's just gone huge since. So I think that definitely deserves to be there. The one that I'm most upset about that did not even make the top 100 is Torn by Natalie Imbruglia.
Yeah, I was pretty cut by that as well.
How can you not include Torn?
Yeah, well, I guess it is listener voted, and I think it was like the ages of the people voting fell between 18 to 29, which I guess that song, because it came out quite a long time before that, maybe wasn't in there. But there's so many songs like that you think could be in the top 5. It's a very contested voting system.
Yeah. What do you think, are there any in there that you were like, that definitely did not belong?
Oh, no, I was pretty okay with the top 5, especially I know Hilltop Hoods might not be everyone's cup of tea, but they've been in the music industry for decades. That their music and that song has gone platinum many times. So I feel like that was a really good indicator of a song that has stood the test of time. With Untouched, I just feel like that is so indicative of where the culture is, because ever since it came out in 2007, like you were saying, it's become this huge anthem. It's become a queer anthem. It had a huge resurgence in COVID because everyone was in lockdown and everyone felt very untouched. And it's become one of those things where it's almost chic to be that level of cringy and I don't know, it's just a belter. It's the one song that people, when it comes on an event or a club or a party or a wedding, that gets everyone on the dance floor. So I feel like it deserved that spot. I almost thought it was going to be higher.
I love that. But I think one of the other criticisms was that even in that top 100, it was very male-led, which I don't think is that big of a surprise, particularly when you think about, the biggest international bands in Australia, the ones that have really kind of gone over our little island is, bands like INXS, bands like Crowded House, bands like, John Farnham, kind of. He's probably more Australian.
I thought John Farnham and Daryl Braithwaite Horses would have been way up there. But again, maybe that's the voting skew. But I thought because they've, again, had a big resurgence in the last couple of years.
And then Akadaka, those big bands, from a while ago. But you're right, the age of the voters, I think, definitely skewed it in a slightly different way. I feel like, songs like Somebody That I Used to Know from Gautier, which was such a huge hit in the US, that kind of put Gautier on the map in the States. I think that definitely deserved that sort of top 10 spot. But other people like Sia wasn't included in the top 100. Tina Arena wasn't there. A lot of people who I think are really core to, the Australian music scene that weren't in there. And I think that's why the group chats are just so upset about it.
Yeah, I think that's why there's a lot of push. Well, it's always that thing, especially with anything with Triple J with their annual countdowns. It's always that thing, right, of it becomes this kind of like gatekeepy thing of like what's cool, what's real music, what's pop, and that's where the clash comes from. And I feel like that conversation we have every year bubbled over in this particular because it was, best Australian songs, and it became this thing about like what is taste, what is music. But I think the pop girls were the ones that I was most upset about. Like thrilled the Veronicas were in there, thrilled that Missy Higgins was in there. Like I feel like Scar could have been number one, maybe given another 20 years. But I would have liked to see Delta Goodrem a lot higher up. I was like, where is the reverence for all the bangers that woman has given us? Kylie Minogue her song should have been way further up. I think she only had maybe one entry on the list. Didn't love it. Where Was Poison by Bardot? Another unofficial national anthem, which hasn't had the same resurgence as some of these other pop songs, but I still thought, it was a real moment in time. They're the songs I was mourning.
Do you know what one that really made me quite happy?
Yeah.
So that song by the Divinals, Touch Myself. Do you want to hear? So one of my best friends from high school, her dad was the bass player in the Divinals.
Oh, that's amazing.
So whenever we'd go to his house, he had all these like Divinals records around.
Oh, wow.
And it was always such like a little claim to fame. I was like, yes, that song. I know that. I know the bass player.
Yeah. Do you think of that now every time you hear it?
I do, which is kind of weird because it's my friend's dad.
Yeah. The first time I heard of that song is it was referenced on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I watched that as a child, and then she was like, I have no idea what that song means. And I was like, yeah, me too. Now I know.
Now we all know. So a little bit of an update on the astronomer debacle that's been happening over the last couple of weeks. And in an absolute genius marketing move, Astronomer has brought on Gwyneth Paltrow to do a little marketing spiel for them on their socials.
Hi, I'm Gwyneth Paltrow. I've been hired on a very temporary basis to speak on behalf of the 300 plus employees at Astronomer. Astronomer has gotten a lot of questions over the last few days, and they wanted me to answer the most common ones. Yes, Astronomer is the best place to run Apache Airflow, unifying the experience of running data, ML, and AI pipelines at scale. We've been thrilled so many people have a newfound interest in data workflow automation. We will now be returning to what we do best, delivering game-changing results for our customers. Thank you for your interest in Astronomer.
I absolutely love this because what they've done is taken something that really put them in a very, very negative light, brought them to the fore, and put this very tongue-in-cheek ad out where they actually explain what they're doing, because I'm pretty sure last time I was like, I don't know what they do, like some kind of like data AI thing. I still don't really understand what they do from that explanation.
I don't
to be
either.
honest.
And to be honest, I don't know if that's for us. That's not our story to tell.
It's really not. But the fact that, and you notice how she put a very a temporary spokesperson. She was very specific about that, which I quite liked. And then to follow up on that, Amy Odell, who is writing the Gwyneth Paltrow autobiography, which is coming out this week, again, perfect timing for her, because she popped out a Instagram story sort of talking about why Gwyneth Paltrow has done this, and also some of the other things that she's been paid for, because that's kind of part of the conversation is how much money did they pay to get Gwyneth Paltrow to do this 1 minute video?
How much money did Gwyneth Paltrow get paid to be the very temporary spokesperson for Astronomer, the company that lost its CEO following the viral Coldplay kiss cam moment? I just wrote a book about Gwyneth Paltrow. I have exclusive information about what she's earned for past endorsement deals, so let's review.
So Amy Odell talks about how she got $1.6 million for attending the Red Sea International Film Festival. Wow. And then $250K from Swarovski to attend an event. Plus she had an additional ambassadorship with them, which was sort of around that $1 million mark. So anything that she puts her name to, she's going to be getting a lot of money for. So I wouldn't be surprised if it hit that kind of $1 million mark. And I think it's probably worth it in order to change the way the language is. You know, what's the language around this? We're going to flip the script. We're going to play into it, make a joke of it, be in on the joke rather than trying to defend. And I think that's a really good PR move in this climate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like the money thing I feel like is important, but I feel like from what we know about Gwyneth and like her immense wealth, it would have been less about the money and more of the fact like she loves to be in on the joke. She's super online. She loves to kind of have that last laugh. It's like when there was that huge thing about her and Meghan Markle having beef, and then she did that little Instagram story where she like panned. Do you remember that? She panned to Meghan like sitting up at her kitchen table with like her like leg on the table eating cake.
Yeah, and it's like about getting her power back because as we know, the Amy Odell biography is not endorsed necessarily by Gwyneth, but this is a way of almost retaking a little bit of power back and rather than having to endorse it, she can kind of like speak for herself, you know, rather than having everybody else speak for her. And I think that's a very Gwyneth thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like she saw a moment to get in on this like big global conversation, and she saw a moment to kind of be part of the joke, especially when like at the moment like everyone else is telling her story. Like 200 people have been interviewed for this book. The excerpts are going everywhere. It's like a much cooler thing and a much more kind of this like old Hollywood power thing for her to just sit back, let that unfold, be part of the joke and kind of almost like bring it full circle. And like when you can land something like this, I think that shows like that almost like puts the power back in your court. It kind of reminds me of, remember in the first season of And Just Like That, when Big's character, sorry, spoiler for anyone who's 3 years behind, dies after being on the Peloton.
I feel like we all know that Big died on a Peloton.
People out in the world sometimes unaware of what's happening in the news cycle. And that was a huge thing because Peloton was like, well, we knew the bike was going to be there, but they obviously didn't know what part of the story it was going to be in. So then they went into crisis managing because then obviously everyone's just like, well, if I get on a Peloton, will I die?
Well, because he had a heart attack on a Peloton. But if you know Sex and the City, you know that Big had heart surgery.
Yeah, it was a fully set up plot point from very like early on in like the 5th season, I think. So that whole thing blew up and no one knew what was going to happen. And then it was actually Ryan Reynolds and his company, because Ryan Reynolds is a smart guy. It's why he's got like $1 billion company outside of being Deadpool and everything like that. Literally overnight organized for Chris Noth to be in a Peloton commercial with like the same like voices of the instructors as the TV show, and did this whole kind of safety thing. And then that just went so viral. It almost, because a lot of time people see the problem but they don't see the response. Like if Peloton had put out like a fact sheet saying why the bike won't kill you, no one would have seen that. But because it was Chris Noth in his like Mr. Big character on the bike and it came from Ryan Reynolds, everyone saw that and it got like a lot of social traction. And I think it's the same thing with this. If Astronomer, to whatever that company does, had put out a statement that was like very kind of clinical and they posted it to LinkedIn, no one would have seen that. Like you needed the Gwyneth card.
But this is what we've been talking about this a lot, Laura, where, you know, when celebs are doing interviews now, when they're doing junkets, 10 years ago, when we did junkets, it was you had a very specific set of questions, no games, no like silly business. It was we're focusing on the movie, we're not doing anything else. And I remember you saying to me the other week that now there is a trend of let's play a game, let's do something funny, let's do something that's going to create buzz, because people are consuming media so differently these days. We're not sitting down and watching TV. We are consuming media in these short 60-second clips, 30-second clips on TikTok, Instagram, X, Twitter, all of that. And having those really grabby, funny, sort of irreverent pieces is what gives headlines now. It's not about, you know, going in depth about the character in the movie, which has its place, I think, particularly in written content. But in video content now, we need to be creating, and publicists know this, and crisis managers know this. They know that be in on the joke, because that's the way that people are going to respond a lot more positively to it.
Okay, so over the last week or so, there's been so much casting news coming out from the Devil Wears Prada, so many shots on the street, and it was all just, it's kind of ticking along. It's one of those things that we haven't covered on the pod much since like that first big announcement of like the cast and who was going to be in it, until an Australian name popped up on the cast list, someone that our audience will be very familiar with because we have talked about many of his shows many times, and that is Patrick Brammall.
And Patrick Brammall is now playing Andy Sachs's new love interest. So bye-bye Adrian Grenier, the problematic boyfriend who stopped Andy from pursuing her dreams and kept her down just because he wanted to see her. And now we have a new, very hot Patrick Brammall joining the cast. I want to know if he's going to be using an Aussie accent or an American accent. I haven't seen anything on what that's going to look like. I'd love him to use his Aussie accent because I think it's always nice when in an American show they use that because it kind of adds to that sex appeal, I think, particularly in an all-American speaking cast. So it'll be really interesting to see what his role is, like what he's going to be doing. Is he going to be working in mags? Like, we don't know too much about what his role is.
Yeah, all they've done is just announce that he's the love interest, nothing else. I would love him to use his Australian accent. I feel like he will, especially because like he's always been such a well-known actor, but I don't think he's done like a big feature film since Overlord, which was like many, many years ago. And now Australian audiences would know him from Glitch, from Offspring, where he also came in as like a love interest in like the second kind of round of the story with Asher Ketty. People loved him from that. But I think it's Colin from Accounts, the comedy on Binge, that he makes with his wife, Harriet Dyer, because that's been so internationally acclaimed. And I feel like that like overseas audiences have really fell in love with that.
Yeah, and I think it's I always love it. It like really brings like a nice little warmth to my heart when someone who we have appreciated, an actor who we have appreciated in our film industry for many, many years, gets that success outside of Australia, and seeing them in those leading roles and in such a huge sequel like Devil Wears Prada. We haven't seen him on the street yet because there's been a lot of some maybe accurate, some maybe not so accurate photos of street style and people on the set, quote unquote, on the set of Devil Wears Prada 2. We haven't seen any of that yet. We just know that he is going to be in Devil Wears Prada 2.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's like there's something like when shows, TV shows and movies film in New York and you see so much of the filming, like that's always been such a big part of Sex and the City, is that like we know they film fake scenes. We know that they decide to give us like little tasters of the show coming up depending on like what they want us to know. So like seeing the external shots in New York is like half the fun. And I feel like that's been the same way for Devil Wears Prada. But it's also been confusing because we've seen Andy Sachs like played by Anne Hathaway in some wild outfits. We don't know like what's a dream sequence, what's her before she goes back into fashion, what's her like later on in the show. We've seen like Simone Ashley out in the street. We've seen Meryl Streep, have yet to see Emily Blunt, have yet to see Stanley Tucci.
We saw Larry David.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You've got to be alert out there, people, because now there's this thing when any celebrity is papped on the streets of New York, whether they're like a Natalie Portman filming a project or they're just someone like a Justin Bieber just walking the streets, everyone's like, now they're filming for Devil Wears Prada 2. You've got to be alert.
This is what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing my jacket over my shoulders because in the photo of Larry David, he's just got like a coat over his shoulders, which is very like... fashion.
Yes.
So this was my nod to Larry David today. But I when I lived in New York, it was literally every single second street was closed down for filming because New York give these major tax breaks for filming in the city.
Yeah.
And they very, very often will close down entire streets. It is not uncommon to see massive trucks, trailers, catering, grips, all of this camera equipment. It is a super common occurrence in New York. So just because someone's filming it doesn't mean that it's the Devil Wears Prada.
No, but it's been a fun game. And we still, again, there's so many things we don't know. Like people still think Patricia Field, who's like the original costumer from Devil Wears Prada and did such an incredible job with that. Obviously did Sex and the City, did one season of Emily in Paris. A lot of people think that she's doing the costuming, but that hasn't been confirmed. And I think it's actually probably like Molly Rogers, who's like been her successor. And so there's a lot of kind of pulling apart of the costumes.
Well, Molly, I actually watched this doco on Molly and Patricia fairly recently. And Molly basically, so she's the current stylist on And Just Like That. And she basically said, I moved to New York, I met Patricia Field, and I've worked with her ever since. So every single season of Sex and the City, Patricia Field's number 2 was Molly. So it's very much, it's the same style. So it would make sense for it to be Molly. And I feel like Patricia is, how old is Patricia Field now?
I feel like she might have potentially like quietly retired. I know she came back to costume Kim Cattrall for her little Sex and the City cameo, and that was Kim Cattrall's like one caveat when the head of HBO called her. But I haven't seen her name right. And look, also the woman's been like giving us beautiful clothes on TV and movies for like decades.
Yeah,
so
she's 84 years old. She's allowed to retire, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But I know there's been a lot of critique of the clothes, but again, we just don't know yet. They probably won't be as good as the first time, but I'm trying not to put too many expectations on this and too many expectations on all like the guest casting, like Lucy Liu coming in, and also with Patrick Bramall. I feel like he has the opportunity to, like, we don't know if they'll end up together. Maybe he'll be like a bit of a Simon Baker character where he's a love interest and they fall apart at the end. I just find him like so charming, both on screen and off screen. I remember the last time I've interviewed him a few times over the years. The last time I interviewed him, it was him and Harriet together. It was the night after Colin from Accounts season 2 premiere, and as we were doing the interview, I was saying like I've never seen energy in a room like that at a screening, which was true. People were, like bouncing off the walls, and he was like so genuinely. He kept saying like really, and then he kept circling back to that. It was like he couldn't quite believe that people were that excited, and I was like, yeah, dude, it's a hit show.
I would like to see him in more of a genuine love interest because Simon Baker kind of has that asshole energy, and I mean that in a nice way, kind of.
Yeah,
like
a hot.
He's
jerk.
He's a hot jerk. Like
and we all love a hot jerk.
Like he kind of gives that energy off. But I think Patrick Bramall has such a, in terms of his good looks, it's a lot more. I don't want to say accessible because I don't think that's very nice.
Oh no, I know what you mean.
But it's like
he looks
genuine.
like a guy. He doesn't. I feel like sometimes when actors are like so otherworldly hot and they get dropped in movies and TV shows, that it's just like you're just so hot you wouldn't be there. It's like how Mila Kunis is always like so often at like the height of her career, like playing a super like dowdy mum, or she plays like a cashier, which I understand hot people can be cashiers as well. But they've also just made her look so gorgeous that she looks like she's been dropped into a scenario that would never take place. Whereas Patrick Bramall, he looks like when you see him on a red carpet, like a hot movie star, but he also looks like the guy that you could bump into easily at the grocery store or sitting next to you at a pub and he wouldn't look out of place.
Yeah, he's like walking barefoot down to the cafe to grab his coffee with his surfboard and like his kids. Like he's just got a more like that classic Aussie true blue bloke, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like his wife, Harriet Dyer, and they now have 2 kids. It's all very cute, and they wrote this love story to be in together, and they met on set. Like, it's the most beautiful love story. But she put up a photo of the announcement and had like a few different casts, and then she just put like a little pink love heart around it. And I was like, this woman wants us all to lust over her husband in this movie. Like, that's the point of it. So I'm team Harriet, and like we're all going to join together and lust over her husband.
So as we've said a few times, we still don't have a official release date. We know that they're filming. It's projected to be released next year. And as Laura has said, they better get a wriggle on.
I know, early next year. I'm worried about timelines. I'm worried weather constraints, about editing. I just feel like everyone needs to get a move on. So the fact that we're actually seeing, I think people have said they've got another maybe month of filming, which we might make it, but it's going to be close to the finish line is all I'm saying.